Hey, Martina.
Hi, Rachel.
Well, we're going to get started in about 5 minutes, but I wanted to ask you about where you are right now.
I'm in Berlin. I'm
Okay.
in my studio. I have a shared studio with other people, and they're working right now.
Uh-huh.
So they're really kind with me to allow me to speak loud. Yeah, and it's like 7 in the evening. Yeah,
Yes,
so
that's right.
yeah, so I've been working all day. So if I don't make sense at some point, excuse me.
Well, I
Yeah.
want to ask everybody out in the audience where you guys are coming in from. So Martina's in Berlin, and I am in Los Angeles. We'd love to hear where everyone else is tuning in from today. Just let us know in the chat bar on the right. I think you're right. So go ahead and let us know. Alyssa's from Los Angeles. Hey, Alyssa.
Nice.
Victoria's from Portugal. Nice. Dave is in Croatia. Oh, same time zone as Martina?
Well,
Nice.
I guess so. Yeah, I think so.
There you go. Yeah. So evening is good for you guys, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's still very bright there.
Well, it is. Yeah. At this time of the year is actually we have daylight until 9 or 10, which is great.
Nice.
I love it.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is a big contrast to the winter where the light stays until 3 or 4.
Right.
That's tough. That's really tough.
Mhm.
Yeah. So.
And the birds are still chirping there.
Yeah, it's cool. I was I was thinking that it's the good thing about working next to a cemetery. So the cemetery is next door, and as I was telling you before, like the building where we are in was a former crematorium. So it was renovated and cleaned up, and and now it's all studio spaces and offices. So, but there is the cool thing is that it's a protected building, so it's they had to keep certain features of the building. So I was showing you before that. Those holes on the wall used to be, or is it creepy to tell this? It used to be like
you can tell us
where
the bodies were.
Where they would usually put like the urns, and now you can store books and stuff. So, but it's that's the interesting part if you're not afraid of ghosts or stuff.
You don't have any issues with that?
Well, I'm looking forward to see one actually.
And you haven't seen one yet?
No, not really.
Okay. Excellent. So we still love to hear where everyone's coming from, but if you could do us a favor, can you please share out the event and just remind everyone that we're getting started? There's a share button underneath the video. If you'll click on that and share it out to your friends and to all our people who are supposed to be here. There's quite a few people registered, but not everyone's on yet. So Letty is from Los Angeles. Yay. And Krista's from London. Wow, we got people from everywhere.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Los Angeles and Martina's in Berlin, and we'll be getting started here in just a minute. We'll wait for everyone to file in. We're just looking at the crematorium that she's working in now.
Yeah, it sounds creepy like this, but it's actually pretty nice.
I think that the internet, Martina, is a little slow on your end, but you're just a little bit pixelated, so we'll just wait for you to stream in a bit here.
Okay.
Yeah. Can everyone hear us and see us okay? Just want to make sure the internet's working okay. Judith is from Chicago. Hello, Judith.
Nice.
That's very cool. Awesome. Excellent. Victoria, you said, yes, we hear you fine. Who's we? Who are you with? Not quite yet. Okay, we got some people coming in here. Again, share it out. Let everyone know that we're getting started here. Yay. Okay, so I meant people who were watching in general. Got it. Okay. Excellent. Well, welcome everyone to Typography Dojo. I am your host, Rachel Elnar. I'm also the co-founder of our Type Ed Typography Education Program. So today we're joined by Martina Flor, Berlin-based lettering artist. Before we get started, again, if you'll share it out, let everyone know that we're getting started. I met Martina at TypeCon last year. Is that right, Martina?
Well, I think it was. I think it was like 2 years ago.
2 years ago, that's right.
Yeah, because last year I couldn't make it, and yeah, so it was 2 years ago already. It's crazy.
Are you going to be at TypeCon this year?
Well, hopefully. I mean, I have a couple of speaking engagements, and I have a baby, so I have to sort of see how I work out with that. So I have to, negotiate with my husband the time I have off to be around the world speaking. But yeah, I mean, there's always the plan of going to TypeCon and ATypI every year.
Right.
Let's see if I make it.
Yeah. And what speaking engagements do you have coming up, just so we know where to catch you?
Well, I have, this year I'm traveling to pretty remote places, or, places that are far from each other. Like I'm going to Thailand. I'm going to, I don't remember the conference name in Thailand. Shame on me. I'm going on November. In November, I'm going to the West Coast, to Adobe Max. Then I'll be going hopefully to ATypI this year, and that will be in Krakow here in Poland.
Okay.
And and I will going to Latin America, to Peru, beginning of next year. So yeah, and I'm going to Paris next week, and there's also little places here in Europe where I will be also speaking or giving a workshop or things like this. But I like to be on the road a little bit. Well, now I have to deal with my new project, my new personal project.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, last year I was on the road a lot, and yeah.
Great. It would be fun to catch you. Actually, I know you'll be at Adobe Max, like you said, on the West Coast. That's going to be in San Diego, which is not too far. Maybe we can meet up. Hopefully, we'll see if
that would be great. Actually, yeah. Well, for me, I'm really bad with distances. So when I found out that I was going to Adobe Max, I thought, hey, I will be, like really close from San Francisco and stuff. If I go to San Diego, and actually I realized later that it's like 9 hours by car, but you should actually take a plane. So
yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking that once again, if I'm gonna visit San Francisco at the end or not. But hopefully, yeah, I'm always willing to travel and meet new places.
Where do you usually give your workshops? Do you do that on the road, or do you do that there in Berlin?
Well, I mean, I've been giving workshops for a while already, for over 5 years, like specifically about lettering. And and in the beginning I was I was trying to go to as many cities, at least in Europe, that I could go to. Like I like the idea of bringing my workshops and make them turn them into international workshops. With the time, I found out that this is really hard to do, because when I organize a workshop here in Berlin, for me it's really easy. Sometimes I organize it here in my studio, and it's there's a lot of organization to do anyways, but I know my way. But
right.
If I have to go to another city, then I have to find a place where to do it. I have to find a way to make people make a system available for people to sign up and stuff. Right. So so with the time I found like I couldn't find the time to actually do this, and right. That's why I started doing online classes as well, because it's a good way of reaching a certain audience that Otherwise, I couldn't reach with my workshops, or it would be, really expensive to go there, and the workshop would be really expensive also for the people signing up. And so it's a good balance. It's still not the same as a workshop, but I think it's it's a good way of, getting a grasp on some techniques and tools that you can use for your creative work.
Right. We struggle with that also. I mean, teaching typography is very difficult online, but at the same time, when you do small classes, it's really hard to reach everybody who wants you to come out and teach a class. So otherwise, you have to go on a major tour.
Totally, which is great actually. Mike Mayer, it's a sign painter from the US, and he literally goes on a tour and he organizes sign painting workshops all around Europe, and even he was in Japan last year and stuff, and in Australia. He really travels the world with those workshops. But of course, you have to be willing to be on the road, for 3 months. And, so he's lucky that he can do that. So, and he's actually making it happen. So.
Oh, good. Well, Martina, you can get your own tour bus, and maybe we'll make that happen for you.
That would be great.
Looks like Victoria is in your class on Skillshare.
Oh, great. Yeah.
How many people?
I think I've seen Victoria.
Oh, good.
On Twitter or somewhere. Yeah, for sure.
How many people are in your Skillshare class?
Well, I have 2 classes, and they sort of, they don't complement each other. Well, they sort of complement each other, but there's over 10,000 people already that signed in for those classes, and that's really overwhelming. And I'm always coming in and seeing new projects, and this is really exciting. That from the skills that I share on that online class, they could really take it farther to projects that look almost professional sometimes.
Wonderful.
And that's great.
Yeah, great.
So I try what I really try to keep to do is to keep track on the projects, really. And even when you're not commenting every project that is coming on the project page, at least give some feedback, whether you like something or not. Or I like the idea of see how that develops, and not just leaving this online and then let it be what it is. But I like to actually come up with new content or post an article about something, and
It's great.
because at the same time, it's a little community that you're creating there, really. And and people is interacting among each other. They actually, there's a lot of people commenting on other people's projects. So I think that's something you should encourage, and you should keep alive.
Right. It is you have a small community, but 10,000 is not small.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The thing is that it's before we went online, I was saying that every time I go, I give a talk, or in front of a big audience, I get really nervous, and that's really exciting. At the same time, that every time it's the same. It's really I'm not getting better at not getting nervous. But when you're not in front of all this big overwhelming audience, then it's much easier. You can be much more natural. And right now there's a lot of you on the other side, but it feels kind of private and comfortable.
Good. Well, you don't look nervous, so that's good.
That's cool.
So I want to ask everyone, if you have any questions for Martina, to put them underneath the questions and topics tab underneath the video screen, so then we can answer them at the end. So, and then cool, Martina, you also have a couple visuals to show.
Yeah, actually, right. I prepared some brief introduction to my work, and
Great.
How did I start with this, and a little bit about my work process.
Okay.
So,
So you want to get started?
Sure.
Okay.
Let me get this. I will
Thank you.
share my screen, okay?
Okay.
So here we are.
All right. And I'll just focus in on that. Okay.
Okay, great. So, yeah. Okay. So here I am. I'm in Berlin. And I like to show this image, although this is something that I designed a couple of years ago already. And but well, I live in Berlin, but I'm not original from here. I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, but I'm one of these people with a big career turn, and I think Berlin has a lot to do with that. When I moved to Berlin, I actually became a letterer when I moved to Berlin. I've been working with typography and letter shapes long before, but I will show some visuals along. So the things that I'm saying sometimes have to do with what I'm showing, sometimes not. But yeah, you have to sort of switch between what I'm saying and what you're looking at. So yeah, Berlin has a lot to do with my career turn. And when I moved to Berlin, I actually sort of take the decision of starting to do lettering professionally, and to take a chance on that. And I don't know if you know about this, but Berlin is a city all about type, really. This is a fact. It's like one of the cities with more type designers or people working with type in the world. So you see type everywhere. There's conferences about the topic. There's meetings every month where you see type nerds sharing their font projects. There's even a Buchstaben museum. It's called in German. It's Buchstaben Museum. It means the Museum of Letters. So yeah, I mean, typography here. It's a very important topic, and topics as legibility, readability, clarity are really essential here. And these are all things, these are all topics that my work doesn't necessarily pursue. Like you can see, my work is colorful, it's expressive, it's playful at times. Sometimes it's not readable. So when I moved to Berlin, I had this fear of how is this community gonna welcome me, if they're gonna welcome me or not. My work is more about telling a story, and I do that by combining color and texture and using letter shapes for that, right? But yeah, lucky me, I was really welcomed by the community. Actually, I sort of found my niche here. So I sort of found a way to stand out, and the community actually welcomed me, and in a way triggered my work in a very unexpected way. I think that my work became much more expressive, much more colorful, much more sharp, thanks to this community that was always, it's like this big brother looking at what you're doing all the time, and having all this community of type designers that do great type work, that to draw letter shapes for a living. It's a lot of pressure, but this can be really negative, but this can as well have a positive impact in your work.
Martina, may I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
So you're talking about the type community in Berlin, correct?
Yeah.
So how do you have a gathering? How do you interact?
Yeah, we actually have something that is called Typostammtisch. It's like a, in English would be like a type discussion table.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually get together every month, and yeah, there's different things happening. Sometimes it's about a talk about a guy who did a thesis on readability. I don't know, next month will be just getting together and share what you're working on. Some other days are like, flea market of your type books that you want to get rid of, or, like there's different topics that this community is dealing with every time we get together. But we actually get together in a bar, and we are all in a mailing list, and this is how we all say, like, hey, let's get together, and someone is organizing the thing, of course. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's basically like this. But yeah, I mean, it's they were really that. Well, I mean, there's big type designers coming to these meetings, right? Like Lucas de Groot is a Dutch type designer. There's a lot of type designers that are really famous, and they are running very successful type foundries coming to this meetings. And it's really interesting because actually, most of my inspiration comes from this very nerdy community. Mm-hmm. It's true. But I think this, the fact that I'm in touch with, most of the people is dealing with type design projects, and I'm one of the few ones that is dealing with lettering projects. At the same time, we're all drawing letters. So yeah, it's I get funnily I get inspiration on this kind of work, on type design work.
So that helps to have a community that is very high end. They're very good at what they do, so it encourages you to do better, correct?
Totally. And I think that mainly has an impact on, I always think that the main focus of my work, although it's very colorful and expressive and it's telling a story, or it's about storytelling, I think there's a big an important focus on letter shapes. I don't take this for granted, and I don't try to masquerade poorly done letter shapes with effects, but it's the other way around. I work a lot on getting my letter shapes right, and I would say that all that comes after, texture and color and layers, it's important, but for me it comes on a second stage, right? Mm-hmm. So I think this community actually respects that from my work, that their my letter shapes are well drawn or well done, or and they contribute a lot as well to put that, by putting that pressure on my work, they contribute a lot. They probably don't know this, but so this is an image that I have on that I always show to my clients, that more or less explains what I do. So I tell stories with letters. It sounds a little bit romantic, but it's pretty easy to understand. So I'm using color and texture and letter shapes, and putting everything together to communicate something, or let the ideas of a client or my own ideas come through my pieces. So I wanted to show you a little bit of my process. I have a video here. So I do digital lettering. As you have seen, like all my results are sharp digital drawings, but I work a lot by hand. So this is more or less how a project of mine will go. I would just run the video and walk you through it. I would just start with very rough sketches on a paper, and I would just put my ideas down on paper, and then this would be like the very first rough sketch. And then on top of that, I will use tracing paper and, to improve, like to pick up the things that I like from the previous drawing, and then change the things that I don't like. And, depending, according to the project, I will require more or less layers of tracing paper. But this is a very common technique, I think, among people who works with letter shapes. I think also among illustrators using, tracing paper, it's a very comfortable way of, improving your drawings. Then I would go into the digital drawing, as you just saw. So it doesn't go that fast, I wish. I really wish, because I always say that, working with letter shapes, it's a very slow moving job. So for me, working with, being able to use sketches in my work, or in my creative work, or in my commercial work, actually is essential. When I started, this is a sketch for a cover that I did recently for a book. Mm-hmm. And there's a big gap, or there's a big step between the sketch and the final artwork, but you can already see, you can find some common structure and an idea of what's the style of the letter shapes, where the illustrations are sitting, and and that's my way of working with clients. Actually, when I started my studio some years ago, I run a one-woman studio, and lettering projects are always they have a pretty quick turnaround. So you usually have very few days or a week to finish a commercial project. So I had to find a way to deal with clients in a very economic way in terms of time. So I had to find a way to be able to show them my ideas and have their feedback, and be able to dedicate most of my time to draw my letters digitally, right? Mm-hmm. So so actually this using sketches with clients, this is another project I did for a magazine cover. So I usually show my sketch to the client, and he will or she will give me feedback on that one, tell me about the color scheme that I want to use or the structure, and then I can have enough time to work on the digital drawing. Mm-hmm. At the same time, sketches are rough, so there's a lot of room after a sketch. This is a bit of a secret, actually. Like art directors that I work with don't really know that this is a little bit my strategy, but rough sketches leave a lot of room for interpretation. So after a sketch is accepted, or they say, oh yeah, you can go on to the digital drawing, I have still room to actually decide on details or change my mind about certain stuff, or try other stuff that work that work better with the artwork. So yeah, I mean, the sketch, it's a good way to, you know, have this good communication with the clients, and also to have enough freedom to work. I don't know if this makes sense somehow. So another sketch for Vanity Fair.
It's beautiful.
So sometimes, thank you. Sometimes I, sometimes I send a black and white sketch. Sometimes I have to work with an image that the client provides, like for instance, these eyelashes. And the client, of course, can say like, "Hey, this is looking too heavy," or I don't like the color scheme," and I can just change that when I go on to the digital drawing. That's a case of also of a cover where that would be more or less the case where I present the sketch with a color scheme, which the client clearly didn't like. And I had to change the color concept completely. The author name is missing there. Crazy. Yeah, so this is more or less how I mean, with the time, of course, I have become much more efficient into working digitally. So sometimes the sketches are really rough, and I can go directly onto the digital drawing. In my workshops, I always recommend, when you're starting, I always recommend to just solve most of the problems on the paper, and go onto the digital drawing when most of the problems are solved. But yeah, with a bit of practice and a lot of work, then you can become also effective at solving problems directly in the digital drawing. So yeah, some other sketches for more complex projects with a lot of typography everywhere.
Martina, what I'm noticing is that when you go from sketch to digital, your digital still retains the handmade quality that you had in your sketches. And a lot of times I see people who do lettering projects, that's totally gone once they go digital. So how are you, I mean, I guess that's part of your magic, but is there any trick to retaining that handmade quality?
I think there's I know what you mean, because there's I have experienced this in my workshops, that although we are working by hand only most of the times in my workshops, people tend to try to use measuring tools. So they very quickly go into drawing guidelines for every letter, and sort of trying to set boundaries for every letter, and this is definitely not a good, making your drawing follow guidelines and measuring tools, or working with measuring tools, just makes your drawing stiff. And I think a good advice when digitizing work is to actually try to draw digitally as freestyle as you were drawing by hand. And because when you go digitally, you tend to set all the guidelines, set a baseline, an X height, and that can be really helpful when you're trying to make all your letters look from the same height. But when you start setting guidelines for your stems and all your strokes, then the drawing, keeps obeying these guidelines instead of you with your eyes trying to design a shape that looks good. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be, or at least that works for me. I don't really measure the stems when I'm drawing. I actually I actually step back and I look at my drawing and I try to identify the things that are looking weird, or the strokes that are looking too thin or too thick. And I'm working more with my eyes, that actually those are actually my my measuring tools. And and I try not to use so many guidelines or rulers to draw letter shapes.
That's a balancing act. You have a very trained eye. A lot of students don't quite. So I guess it comes with experience to be able to identify what's working in terms of the balance and the shape, correct?
Yeah, I think so. But I think that, comes with the, producing a lot. And with the time, of course, I look at work that I've done. Luckily, I look at work that I've done 3 years ago, and I would do it differently, perhaps, like not only in terms of process, but also in terms of, it's great to see how your eye becomes more sharp and how you can easily identify mistakes, and this makes you also a lot more effective when you work. I'm now much more effective when I have to start a client project or a commercial commission. I'm actually much more, with the time you also develop a certain work process. So it gets, every time gets better and more refined. And the same happens with the eye, I guess. And I noticed that even in my workshops. Most of my workshops last 6 hours, and I can see people actually, I always have the feeling that they leave the workshop a little bit more illuminated. That, I have the feeling that they can see things after workshops that they couldn't see before. And, by actually pointing out stuff during the process, they start actually seeing that. And it's just, about having someone who guides you into realizing these things, and then after a while they can realize it themselves. So during my workshops, I start towards in the beginning I start pointing out problems, but towards the end I start asking questions instead of saying like, hey, this looks a bit weird, or that A looks a bit twisted or whatever. But towards the end, I start asking questions like, how do you think, what will you change? Or, and, they start finding their own solutions. So
that's great.
Yeah, that's a little bit, it's really rewarding, I have to say. So let me see how, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my side projects as well. I work a lot by hand, but I also spend most of my time, 95% of my time, I spend it in the computer, and percent of that time I spend it in social networks, and I guess you also, guys. And I have to say that a lot of side projects that I've run in the last years, or I normally run side projects, and a lot happens through social networks. It happens online, so you can have instant feedback from people. I have one side project that I started, I don't know how many years ago already, like 3 or 4, I don't know, 3, I guess. And I guess perhaps you heard about it, but if not, you can just go online to lettering-calligraphy.com. This was a project that I put together with Giuseppe Salerno. He's an Italian calligrapher and friend of mine. I met him here in Berlin in one of these, type discussion tables. So you can also meet people you can partner with in those meetings. So what we basically did is an online competition, and yeah, we we did an online website, and we were uploading every day a letter. I was, doing lettering. I was illustrating that lettering or drawing that letter, and he was doing calligraphy. So he was writing that letter, and we usually had like a keyword. So we had to draw a sexy S. And the people could vote which one they like better. And I think that was the real key of the project, because people, we had around 2,000 hits per day in this project. That was much more than we ever expected to have. And these are some, sorry, I have some guidelines here. These are some examples. It's a liquid L. So in this project, we were, experimenting a lot with different techniques. He was, working with water and different tools and different kind of inks, and drawing on metal, writing on metal and on cardboard. On my side with lettering, I was, exploring different styles. This is a very great one where he wrote with his finger on iPad screen. So it's still writing, but it's on the edge. And me with lettering, I was working sometimes more illustrative, like this in this example. Sometimes, sorry about that guideline. Sometimes, a little bit more abstract. This is the constructive V. So it was a wonderful project to just, let go and experiment a lot of things. And our work became first, it was like a preparation for the commercial work, the world, because for me it was like, I had to finish a letter in a couple of hours every day. So it was, it was a real training of my working process in a way. I had to come up with an idea that communicates a certain attribute to that letter, and I had to come up with the lettering or a letter for that. And our work really became a lot better, and we got a lot of attention as well for this project, which, as I was saying before, which was also like, this big brother eye that is, judging your work and, sort of pushing you to get there. And we really created a great collection of work. I mean, we drew around 200 letters each. So, I mean, it's nowadays for my creative work, sometimes I just go and, if I get a commission for a project, sometimes I go and check my lettering versus calligraphy library, and I decide to take, one letter shape farther into a lettering piece. And this is really great that, in such short time, I try so many styles, and then I can pick up from. So yeah, and it's cool as well that other people can get inspired through this, that they can also, it's also a resource for other people. So I encourage you to visit the website as well. I mean, it's not running daily as it was before, but still you can see the whole collection of letters, and also people that we invited to participate. So there were other letters and calligraphers from all over the world, taking a battle. And yeah, that was really interesting and an exciting project. But yeah, I mean, I use, this sort of side projects as a way to somehow inform my own work. So it happened to me, or I noticed with time that the clients that keep coming, they keep asking for, or they can come after something that you have already done. Like most of the times, they will point out some piece in your portfolio that they are interested in. Or they think that this is more or less the direction they would like to go. So I think side projects are a good, so if they come after work that you have done, then your work starts to repeat, right? Like if if the client comes after work that you have done before, so you don't replicate that, but you sort of work on the same line, and then another client comes after the same, and so your work starts to replicate. So I think it's a good way, like having side projects is a good way to sort of bring in some new work or some new things that you would like to experience, or you would like to experiment with, and hopefully clients will come after that as well. So your work sort of keeps developing with the time. Or this is at least what is in the back of my head when I do side projects. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to show you the last one that I did, which is a postcard project that I call letter collections. And it's basically, I design postcards and I send them away to friends, colleagues, and people who I didn't know. I sent a postcard to Lionel Messi and to Tim Burton. Mm-hmm. So it's because, I mean, no one can stop you from sending postcards to people you admire or anything. So and I actually designed a goal of 100 postcards that I send away, and it's just fabulous to see them all together nowadays. These are some of them, but they are actually 100. I cannot believe this. And I did this through a year where I was working a lot. So there's always a bit of time to do something that, on the side, or that's my experience.
Maybe when you're not sleeping.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's a little bit my presentation, and
great. The work is very beautiful. I don't know how you fit the time in to do all that.
Well, as I said, I think with time is like you become a lot more effective, and I have to say that I'm also pretty constant with my work. I have to say that I'm really a strange freelancer that comes in the studio at 9 and leaves at 6, and I keep doing that every day. So it's a good way of keeping your production levels stable.
And does being in Berlin, does it inspire your work? I mean, outside of the group, right?
Yeah, I think a lot. I think, I like to say that I can work from anywhere in the world, because, you can just take your computer and work everywhere. And in fact, I work for US and I work for United Kingdom. Like, I work with people from all around the world, but at the same time, I personally, the fact that I like, moving places, moving cities, it's a pretty critical thing to do. It sounds really exciting and everything, but there's a lot of things that, you have to work hard on, like things that you gave for granted before, like friends and a place to work or to live. When you move cities, suddenly everything is sort of shaken up. And so it's a good way to, reaccommodate your priorities and the things you want to do, like coming to a new city, a lot of people don't know you. So you can actually sort of put this puzzle together the way you want it to be. So I think in this sense, Berlin inspired me, or sort of provoked this change in me, like this going forward, this career. And besides this, if you walk around Berlin, it's a city full of typography. There's a lot of lettering, vernacular lettering pieces on the streets, and and this is really interesting when you're a little bit type freak.
Of course. Always inspired from the street, right? That's wonderful.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. And I'm always like taking pictures of stuff. So yeah.
Let's answer some questions from the group. We have two in here. So I'll start with the first one here from Judith.
Yeah.
So Judith says, when you work on a commission, what sort of art direction or change requests do you get from the client, since they may not be as educated about type and lettering, or are they? It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I have to say that my clients are really very educated, because I mostly work with with agencies and publishing houses or magazines. So the person I'm talking to, it's usually a creative director or an art director, and they usually they have first the language skills to speak about typography, which is sometimes really hard with a client that is not educated in design, which he doesn't need to be. Like, we need to be educated about design, not our clients necessarily, or we have to educate them, but that's another story. But I can speak really clearly about the brief and my ideas, and the features of the design with an art director, and I know that we are speaking the same language, and I also think that they're really important for my work. I mean, art directors and creative directors are people who really know what they work with, and an editor really knows what works in his magazine, and they can really point you out at things in your design and make it better for their audience. As well, they many times come after, having me bringing some input into their work. So it's a win-win situation in this sense, and I find very hard now that I got used to work with this, educated kind of client. I find really hard to work with direct clients, like someone who comes to me directly and asks for a logo, because there is, this gap in between that where I feel that there's another director missing or something. So yeah, I don't know if that sort of.
That's a lot of education for direct clients. It takes a long time to get them to the same level.
Totally. And and I think it's our work to to sort of do it. But it's hard when you got used to sort of work with the educated art director. No?
Right. Right. Okay, I think that's good. Judith, I hope that we answered your question. Okay. If you guys have any other questions, please put them underneath the questions tab. Let's see. Bernardo is saying, "Hi, Martina. I'm very curious to whether cultural differences affect your work. Since you work mostly with words, does it help or hurt to be moving between cultures and languages? Originally from Argentina, working in Berlin, and working in so many languages."
That's also an interesting question, I have to say. I got this question a couple of days ago in an interview, whether I think there's a certain style attached to a culture, and I think nowadays this is with the internet and being able to like this boundary between cultures is becoming a little bit more blurry. However, we still have this, and I think what I was mentioning in the beginning about this strong culture in typography here in Germany, where clear shapes, legibility, readability are very important. I can also tell that those are not values that I learned from in my studies back in Buenos Aires. That there's according to the places where you are, the focus is put on different stuff. So let me read that question again. Yeah, I think, I don't know if it helped or hurts. I think a little bit of both. I think I cannot, I cannot help that I have a certain culture that probably expresses through the sort of art I do. I can also, this comes out definitely, and I probably cannot measure this as well as I actually can see that the environment I'm in right now sort of pushes my work in a certain direction. How I was saying before that my letter shapes and my focus, the focus of my work is on my letter shapes and make clear, great letter shapes. So I think there's differences according to the cultures, and you can take the best out of each of them, and that's what I'm trying to do here, like being Argentinian born, living in Berlin, I guess.
I hope that helps, Bernardo. Let's see. Okay. There's another question here from Alyssa. Alyssa saying, hi, Martina. Other than maintaining a consistent workday, how do you maintain a work-life balance, especially while also working on personal projects?
Yeah. Well, I have to say that I tend not to set a clear boundary between my work and my personal life. I mean, it happens that I'm playing with my son and an idea for a commission comes, and as well as it happens that I'm working on a commission in my computer and I think of my son, right? So of course there's certain spaces where I do certain stuff. So if I'm, I usually get certain things done in the studio, but it can happen that in very busy moments I'm sketching on the underground or in the waiting room of the dentist, or so yeah, I mean, I try I try to sort of work as efficiently as I can, and to sort of keep goals even daily. Like sometimes I come in the office or in the studio and I think like, hey, I want to get this and this done, and some other things are a bit more flexible, so maybe those I will get done in the evening, or I will answer emails in the evening. So I guess I see everything as a whole and not like, okay, this is my work and this is my life.
So the way you balance them is you just put them together.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay, I hope that answers it, Alyssa. Thank you for your question. We have another one from Dave. Dave asks, how much importance do you place on looking to lettering and typography produced throughout history for inspiration versus the tendency to be heavily influenced by modern, perhaps more readily accessible work produced by our peers today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, well, nowadays there's so much out there, right? Like there's been like a lettering boom, and you see lettering everywhere, and you go on Instagram and wow, under the hashtag lettering, you will see like a world of stuff.
Right.
So, you will see things that are good, things that are not so good, things that are not even lettering, things that are, calligraphy or even street art. So there's like a little bit of mix of everything right now, especially in the social media. So I do take a lot of inspiration on old typography, and I look at old specimen books and advertising from the past, as well as I don't respect it at all. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes I have to start a project and I say, okay, I want to work with Victorian typography or whatever typography inspired in the 50s or whatever. So I might go flip through a lot of things from that time. But at the end of the day, when I'm drawing my computer, I just draw the shapes as I think they look good. And maybe that wouldn't have not been done like this in the Victorian time, but it works nowadays, and I think it works for that particular job. So I try to to look at things in the past, but not to replicate them, because that was done already, right? And of course there's so many great artists doing lettering right now, and it's great to get to know them. Like Eric Marinovich was here last week, paying me a studio visit because he was at Type of Berlin speaking, and we get to know each other, and that's great. And I love his work, and it's great to have contemporary people working at the same time. But I think everyone should choose like the sort of I think that the best way to be able to give a contemporary take on what you do is to either draw completely free and do whatever comes from out of your mind, mm-hmm. or go back, see what has been done, and then do your own thing from that. Do your own take on that.
Right. I would say probably you might look for inspiration from history if the creative brief requires it, if the project requires it, right?
Totally. I mean, there's sometimes that the story of a book happens in a certain time, and then you will go flip through things of that time. Other times it's just I want this piece to look like dynamic, so I will use a connected script for that, and because I can do a lot of use my handwriting, and things will move in a more flowing kind of way. I mean, letter shapes have also their own tone, and you can use that to communicate a certain thing. And you don't need to always refer to historical pieces, but there is a reference still to historical models. When I draw a connected script, many times I will base my shapes on a English script, or on English calligraphy, or on brush scripts from the 50s. So there's always a little bit of things to pick up from. There's a lot of history, and that's why letter shapes are, or we draw letter shapes the way we draw it nowadays. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Great. I hope that answers your question, Dave. Great. So I think we're wrapping up here. Thank you so much for staying at the office so late for us.
It's getting dark. The people is gone already.
I know. Everyone is gone, and it's starting to get dark. So, wow, you've spent a long day at the office, but I really, really appreciate that you're sharing your work with us. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. This was really fun. Yeah. And thank you, everyone, for being there and engaging with their questions.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I appreciate you guys. Have a good day. Today is Wednesday here in Los Angeles. You're at the end of Wednesday, right, Martina?
Yeah, exactly.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.